The Faces of Patriotism, this exhibit in our museum, represents the people that love this country. These people in the 1960s, the women were given equal rights after President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Amendment. There was a clause in there for equal rights for women. These women, for the first time in their lives, were able to get a job, earn an hourly wage. Previously, they had worked in the fields, domestic work, or stay-at-home moms. After the 1964 landmark Civil Rights Act, they were able to become employed. Once the state of Georgia received that law, in 1967, the women went forward and they joined the Manpower program. The first thing that the teachers were told that were teaching them was that they were illiterate. They were given a comprehension test. These women aced the test. They completed the training for the assembly line and how to work with men in the workplace. They joined their counterparts down at the Thiokol Chemical Plant, and they formed the first co-ed workplace in American industry. They converted this region from plantation and domestic work into an economic workplace. We have 29 people. The 21 women from M132 were killed that morning, and the 8 men, they risked and lost their lives trying to save them. The first person, Miss Celia Alberta, she was the fastest manufacturer on the trip flare line. Mrs. Banks, she was a former teacher. The Booth, Gloria, and Ann were sister-in-law and mother-in-law. The eldest person to die was Miss Bertha Brunswick. The youngest person next to her was Betty Birch. She was 19. Betty and Charles Burt, they were in-laws, sister-in-law and brother-in-law. They rode to work that morning with their 2 cousins. Then we have James Chapman and Jack Cox. Those 2 gentlemen were from Texas. So as you can see, our people in the Faces of Patriotism were just like the military that they served. They came from all across the country. Chapman and Cox from Texas. The 2 sisters killed in this incident, Betty Jean Roberts and May Alice Taylor, they were both from Florida. Charles Monack, he himself was from Alabama. So they came here because there was opportunity. These were the people that refused public assistance. Opportunity had come to America, and they were filling the void. These are the manufacturers of the munitions for Vietnam, the people that upheld the Constitution of the United States. Yvonne Conley and Mildred Davis, they rode to work that morning with a young lady by the name of Karen Jordan. She's now Karen Cannon. Karen survived the explosion, but Karen came to Camden County from Ohio. Then we have the 2 first cousins, Willie Fuller and Annie Mae Hutchison James were 2 first cousins. So we had a lot of relatives involved in this explosion. Annie Lois Williams, she was the mother of 7, youngest child 9 months, oldest child 15. But the amazing thing about her story is the American story. Her husband raised all of the children and put them through college. The doctrine that this country was formed on is the doctrine by which these people lived: God, family, community, and country. We have up here also Sandra Ross. She was pregnant at the time of the explosion. We are trying very hard now, since the United States government has normalized relations with Vietnam and Laos, to now let's heal our people, honor them by granting them the Congressional Gold Medal. The families of the deceased and the injured fought in court 17 years to be compensated and to find out the cause of the explosion. It was due to the lawyers of Chapman and Cox, 2 private attorneys, that uncovered the memo which explained that The material that the workers were working with was actually C7 explosive, not C2 hazardous. Once they discovered this memo, which reached the plant 3 weeks after the explosion, this case moved forward. The workers had sued Thiokol first, and Thiokol was found not liable because of workman comp. Then they were given permission to sue the United States government. They sued the government for a total of $700 million, which Judge Lawrence granted them $460 million. The government lost 5 times. Each time they were found liable. Judge Lawrence died, and they got another conservative judge. Meanwhile, Thiokol, being the contract involved in this explosion, 15 years later, almost to the day, Thiokol was involved in another explosion, the Challenger. This case was still going on in the Brunswick Federal Court. But at that time, the government decided to settle. 2 years later, payments were made. Chapman and Cox family together were awarded approximately $1 million. But the settlement from the federal government, including their $1 million settlement, was $25 million. After 17 years, that was what was awarded. Most of the funds went to the attorneys. Some of the families never were paid. Charles Monac family, he was killed. He was an engineer. His wife, Miss Dorothy, was severely injured. They said that her claim was filed after the statute of limitations. They were not compensated. Yvonne Connolly, the wife of Henry Connolly, was never compensated. Mildred Davis' family was never compensated. The family of Hazel Davis, the scalpers got to them. They only got $25,000. So all in all, these people that believed in America, that supported our troops, they were never, some of them, ever compensated. This was not only, the $25 million was to the families that lost people in the explosion, but also the 50 to 100 people that were injured. We have a lot of dreams and motivations, but our people, we could believe in them. They expressed a desire for us to become educated. They looked forward to a future better than the past. They were willing to work toward that future, and they passed that legacy on to us.